Hi there, and welcome to The Artist Craft. I'm your host, Stacey Cochran, and we have an excellent show for this week. Joining us in studio is Ed Southern, who is the Executive Director for the North Carolina Writers Network. Thank you very much for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about the North Carolina Writers Network, particularly for the folks who are watching who might not be familiar with what the organization is.
We're a nonprofit group, the only statewide organization dedicated to promoting, educating, and leading writers at all stages of experience and ability, from people who are just starting out or thinking, they might want to do some writing in their spare time, to people who are looking to make a career of it, to people who have made a career of it.
What would you say the ultimate purpose or the most central purpose to the network is?
The best thing that we can do for writers, the single best thing, is to bring them together with other writers. Writing can be a very lonely and isolating pursuit. Mm-hmm. You have to spend a lot of time at your desk sort of alone in your own thoughts. And to have an opportunity to meet other people who are engaged in the same thing that you are, who have the same passion that you do, mm-hmm. and find out that you're not alone in the struggles that you go through is tremendously valuable.
So what are some of the ways that you're doing that?
We have 3 major statewide events each year. We have our spring conference, our summer residency, and our fall conference. Mm-hmm. And these are events where we have workshops, we have panel discussions, we have readings, we have lectures, and we also have time just to socialize, where writers can get together and get to know one another. A writer from Murphy can get to know a writer from Manteo. You never know who that other writer is going to be, who's going to inspire you with great ideas or help you shape whatever it is that you're working on, or help you make that next step forward.
Mm-hmm. How publishing centered would you say the network is in relation to, it sounds like to me, in learning about it over the past year or so, and then from what you're saying, that the real focus of it is in connecting writers. There are other components to writing as well, thinking about how to publish a book and finding a publisher for a book and agents, elements of craft and learning the process of how to write a book, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. How publishing centered is the Writers Network?
I guess the correct answer to that would be it depends. Mm-hmm. It depends on what the writer is looking for, because there are plenty of writers for whom the craft of writing is enough. That's what they're into it for. Sort of the Emily Dickinson model. They want to write their thoughts, their stories, poems, whatever. And for them, we offer workshops in the craft of writing to help them become better writers. Mm-hmm. Others are looking to get published, and either they want to supplement their income, they want to make a career of it, make a living at writing, or they just want to see their name and their work in print. For them, we offer discussions about various aspects of that, about getting published, about what to do once you're published, how to best market your book and yourself. We also offer, especially at our fall conference, we bring in editors and agents. For an additional service fee, you can sign up to have them critique your manuscript. And plus, they're at the conference. You have a chance to meet them, you have a chance to talk with them. And again, you never know what connection is going to lead to the next big thing.
Now, how do you go about setting up the speakers? Particularly, I would think if you have a lot of agents and a lot of editors from major publishers or even major publishers in state, that's going to be attractive to these writers who are interested in finding out how to actually publish their book. How difficult is it to get the best speakers, and how much of a daily challenge is that for you as the new executive director?
It's not much of a challenge, really. The North Carolina Writers Network has been around since 1985, and so we have a long and successful track record. It's not that we've just started up and are announcing ourselves to the world. We've had editors and agents coming down here, or bringing editors and agents from in-state to our conferences, for 15, 20 years now, and so they're aware of us. They know that North Carolina is a hotbed for writers, and that this is a great place, where maybe they can find that next big novel that they've been looking for. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that difficult to attract them down here, luckily.
And how are you balancing your new position as the executive director with other pursuits that you have going on in your career and in your life?
At the moment, I'm not really. You know, whenever you start a new job, there's a whole new set of challenges and things that you have to learn. You know, you have to educate yourself first of all, and with a lot of the changes that have been going on at the network, that's been more than full-time job so far. But you know, it's been a great deal of fun, and I have learned more than I ever expected to. So I'm sure it'll calm down at some point.
Is it a really, it seems like from the outside it's a very political position, is it? Or how would you characterize that?
I wouldn't say it's political. It's a social position. You have to enjoy meeting people and talking to writers, and you have to, this is sort of a cliche, but you have to speak their language. You have to know, you know, what their interests are, what their needs are. You know, if you're not comfortable with that, I mean, we are, after all, a network.
Sure.
You know, we're there to bring people together. If you're not comfortable playing that role, it's probably not the job for you.
What are some of the strengths that you have that you draw on from your experience and background that enable you to be able to do that well?
Well, I've been in the book business for going on 15 years now, and including the last 8.5 years I was with John F. Blair Publisher in Winston-Salem, and that helped me a great deal to, you know those needs that I was just speaking of, you know what writers are looking for and know how the book business works, so that if that is a writer's ultimate goal, is to be in the book business in some form, you know, I bring a lot of personal experience to that.
What about publishing interests you on a fundamental level? I mean, this is something that obviously you've dedicated your life to. Where did that motivation come from?
I've always enjoyed reading. I've always enjoyed books. Started writing when I was a teenager. I remember when I was in college, I spent a semester studying in London. I can remember walking into some of the great old bookstores that they have in London. There's one in Piccadilly that's 200 and some years old now, and just really being spellbound. I remember having to hand my wallet to friends, like, you just better keep that for me. I'm not to be trusted with it in here. And you know, just to look at shelves and shelves of books, it just sort of fascinated me. There's a great story about Thomas Wolfe that when he first walked into the library at Harvard, he looked around and started crying. And someone asked him why, and he says, because I know I can never live long enough to read all of these books. And I've never been moved to tears, but I've had similar thoughts. It's, you know, it's sort of a buffet, you know, to look at something like that.
Now, how does the network go about reaching new members who might not be familiar with the North Carolina Writers Network? Obviously, doing interviews like this helps. What are some of the other strategies that you have on the horizon for meeting that need? Well,
the best advertising is word of mouth. And so we encourage our members to, you know, if you're enjoying the network, if you feel like you're getting something out of the network, be an evangelist for the network. You know, there's sort of be our sales team. You know, talk to your friends who write. Talk to your friends who are interested in writing. Let them know what the network's doing. Let them know how much you've gotten out of the network and how, you know, valuable it's been to you. And that is more effective than any kind of ad campaign. We do a lot of publicity. We send out a lot of press releases. We've sent out several this spring. I'm sure that plenty of book and features editors are getting sick of hearing from us, but tough. You know, we let folks know what we're doing, and try to do a lot of interesting and worthwhile things.
How about things with the booksellers? How in contact are you guys with booksellers like Quail Ridge Books here in the Triangle, and then booksellers like Park Road Books in Charlotte, and the chain stores as well?
We're actually very lucky. The president of our board of directors works for the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance, and so we sort of have an automatic in with the independent bookstores like Quail Ridge and Park Road Books. You know, those are some good friends of mine. The last 8 years I spent with Blair, a lot of that time, almost all of that time, was spent talking to bookstores on a daily basis and getting to know them. And so they've been a great friend to the network. Quail Ridge in particular has been a great friend to the network over the years, and we look forward to continuing those relationships with them.
Now, you guys have recently made a move from having a physical office in Carborough to now you're all online. Is that correct?
For the most part, yeah. We are now in what we call a virtual office. We have our staff members working out of their homes, and we communicate mostly via phone and email. We do get together every now and then and meet in person. But what we realize is that being a statewide organization and serving members from the mountains to the coast, it makes more sense to have a more fluid structure. Mm-hmm. It allows us to be more responsive and more flexible in what we do. We're not tied down to one particular place, so that we can truly be an organization for North Carolina, for all of North Carolina, no matter what corner of it you happen to be in.
Sure. And I would imagine that financially it's probably, is it a wiser decision, a smarter decision to move to this virtual?
So far, yes.
Well, it seems like to me there's two things. On the one hand, it would be more financially, advantageous to have a virtual office, but if there's a downside to it, is there any way that it depersonalizes what the North Carolina Writers Network is?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't noticed that yet. In fact, a lot of the new technology that's available to us, we've just redesigned our website, ncwriters.org, that allows now for blogs and forums. Members can go online and post their own readings or other literary news. And so in a way, obviously any kind of technology to an extent does depersonalize things. But it's also allowed us to be more communicative and open with our members and allow them more input in what we're doing.
Sure.
With the website where they can come on and they can leave comments, as opposed to us just putting out a newsletter from Carborough and they can read it or not.
Well, it's fascinating. So how many writers are using these blogs? I'm a big fan of blogs and read several daily blogs myself. Has that transition been embraced by the members?
It has been. We're slowly ramping it up. We just launched the redesigned website in March, and so we're sort of slowly making it more and more active, and getting the kinks worked out and things like that. So far, we've had a very good response to it, though. The members have really liked. We're able to post, things that we're thinking about doing. I said, well, we're thinking about doing this with the summer residency. What do you think? Mm-hmm. And so it allows them to comment, send in emails, things like that, and I think they've enjoyed that so far.
Now, from an administrative point of view, how does this new virtual office work? Are you guys teleconferencing a couple of times per week? Is it all online through email? Mm-hmm. And from an administrator's point of view, is that an effective way to manage the network?
It has been so far, and I think it will be. I think we'll only get more adept at it as we go forward. Luckily, we have a very small staff, so communication is fairly easy. It's not like that we're having to bring a bunch of people together from far-flung locales. With phone and email, it just requires, constant communication and very clear communication, but we are a writers network after all, so we should be pretty good at that.
Awesome. Well, if you're just tuning in, the guest today is Ed Southern. He's the Executive Director for the North Carolina Writers Network. We've been talking about the purpose of the North Carolina Writers Network. They do have a website called ncwritersnetwork.org.
ncwriters.org.
ncwriters.org. If you'd like to check that out on the web, that's ncwriters.org. We also have a book report coming up this week. Natasha Gilliam is going to be reviewing Brett Battle's latest thriller, The Deceived. So take it away, Natasha.
Okay, Stacey, this week's book report features The Deceived, the latest title by best-selling mystery author Brett Battles. Now, the protagonist, Jonathan Quinn, must get rid of the evidence because his profession this time around calls him to a popular Los Angeles shipping port. At the beginning of the novel, we are introduced to Stafford, a shipping hand that isn't being so truthful. Jonathan Quinn only accepts the truth, and he can tell Stafford was given directions from Mr. Albina to be dishonest. Nate, Quinn's apprentice, is nervous as he learns Quinn has emotional ties to the evidence found at the shipping port. From Washington, D.C. to Singapore, Jonathan Quinn is in search of the truth, but could the truth lead to nothing more than deception? The Deceived is author Brett Battle's second novel. His first novel was The Cleaner. This is where we are first introduced to his lead character, freelance operative Jonathan Quinn. Brett Battles, a California native, is praised by New York Times best-selling author Sheldon Siegel to be a compelling new voice in the thriller genre, is what Siegel says. Personally, I enjoy his detail. His descriptions allow the reader to grasp his characters and their situations. I recommend that you read The Deceived, scheduled for release June 24th, 2008, as well as his first novel, The Cleaner. And all right, back to you, Stacey.
Thank you very much, Natasha. If you're just tuning in, Natasha's just been reviewing The Deceived by Brett Battles, which is his latest thriller, available from St. Martin's Press. And our guest in studio today is Ed Southern. He is the Executive Director for the North Carolina Writers Network. And we've been talking about the purpose of the North Carolina Writers Network. Of course, their website, if you're interested in checking them out online, is ncwriters.org, right? ncwriters.org. But at this moment, I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk about your background with John F. Blair. In 2001, you co-authored a book with the staff at John F. Blair, Travel North Carolina, Going Native in the Old North State, which I guess that's an annual publication, or they've updated it with several editions?
Every few years it comes out. The third edition just came out last year.
What was that process like, writing that book?
Surprisingly difficult. The reason that we did it was we'd seen some travel guides to the state that had come out that were clearly inaccurate. Obviously, the authors hadn't actually visited the state. They just read some things about it. I remember seeing one article in a national magazine that was describing the perfect weekend in North Carolina, and they suggested the Sienna Hotel here in the Triangle. And for breakfast, they recommended a bakery in Asheville. Now, personally, I don't like driving
That's
3-4 hours.
For breakfast from Raleigh.
Yeah, for my breakfast. But you know, and so we thought, well, we're all North Carolinians. We know this state.
Sure. And Blair is a North Carolina-based publisher.
Blair's a North Carolina-based publisher. It's been in Winston-Salem since 1954. And then, you know, when you actually get into it and you realize all the fact-checking that you need to do and all the things that you know but you don't know as far as being willing to put them on the page. It was an interesting process, and I really learned a lot in doing that.
And you had about 6 people you were co-authoring that with, right? So how did you do it? Did you decide on different locations that each of you would focus on?
Yeah, we divided up the state by locale, and we typically tried to give people a part of the state that they would know the best.
What was your focus?
I did Winston-Salem and Charlotte.
Very cool. And what are some of the spots in Charlotte that our viewers should check out if they're watching and haven't visited these places?
Well, if you're into history, or even if you're not, you need to stop by the Levine Museum of the New South in Uptown Charlotte. They have a fascinating permanent exhibit from cotton mills to skyscrapers that traces the history of the South, and particularly of North Carolina, from the end of the Civil War through Reconstruction all the way up to the present day. And it's a fascinating transformation that they document.
The Levine Museum in downtown Charlotte sounds exciting. Every time I make it over to Charlotte, it's amazing the growth there as well as in the Triangle too. I think
now you can ride the light rail into Uptown Charlotte. So
well, there you go. Well, now you actually worked at John F. Blair as well. Tell us a little bit about, our viewers for this show really are comprised of folks who are interested in publishing and writing and the craft, and are writers themselves. What is something that our viewers who are aspiring writers might not know about how a publisher like Blair, John F. Blair Publishing, works, that aspiring writers should know?
Well, John F. Blair in particular specializes in regional nonfiction. Blair does a lot of travel guides, history, folklore, things like that. The thing that all aspiring writers need to know whenever you're starting to submit your work to a publisher is you need to know who you're submitting to and what they're looking for. You know, if you have written a science fiction novel, you wouldn't want to send it to Blair. That's not what they do. You know, if you've written a travel guide, you wouldn't want to send it to Algonquin. That's not what they do. The thing that I tell a lot of aspiring writers is remember that even though what you've written probably is and should be your baby, it's very close to your heart, you have to remember that once you start, once you put one little toe into the publishing process, you're entering a business world, and you know, when you start talking to publishers, it's a business transaction that you're talking about, and so you have to approach it in a professional way. You have to do your research, you know, just like you wouldn't sign for a loan at a bank without reading the details. You know, you need to be aware of what you're doing.
Well, that's fascinating to hear. It sounds like one of the challenges from the publisher's perspective, or difficulties or frustrations, I suppose, is seeing these aspiring writers who have these, you know, books that they obviously put a lot of time into, but they maybe don't take the time to then research what the publisher's mission is about and what the publisher has published in the past. I think that's probably, and I bet that's probably a thing that a lot of agents deal with. They get stuff that's just inappropriate for them, and it might otherwise be a sellable book if the author would take the time to find the right agent and the right publisher for it.
Probably so. And you know, the publisher doesn't, you know, they can usually tell right off whether or not a book's appropriate for them. And so sadly, after someone's put a great deal of work into this manuscript, it doesn't really get considered because it just doesn't fit their publishing mission.
Now, what was your position at Blair?
I was Vice President of Sales and Marketing.
Oh, that's exciting. So what kinds of things would you do in terms of marketing and sales?
Well, I set up the author tours, set up the book signings. It's part of why I'm got to know so many booksellers around the state. Met with sales reps, you know, talked to different booksellers about various books, you know, let them know about publicity that an author might be receiving, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Helped unload trucks.
All kinds of work from the ground up, it sounds
Well, it's a small company, so we all help out.
Now, do they have a building? Do they actually have an office, or is that more of a virtual office as well?
No. You know,
do you see them transitioning towards that, maybe?
I'd be real surprised. With a publishing company, there always has to be a place to keep the books. You know, you're selling a physical, you know, so unlike the Writers Network, where we're basically selling a service or providing a service in exchange for your membership. You know, with a publishing company, you're selling a physical object, and so you need some sort of location.
Now, with the North Carolina Writers Network, you mentioned earlier that you guys have 3 conferences, is that correct? And as this will air, I guess probably the next conference coming up would be then the fall conference. What is the date for the fall conference? How can folks find out about it who are watching our program?
Check our website, www.ncwriters.org, and we'll have details about that. We do not yet have the date and venue confirmed, but it will be in the Triangle. And it's probably going to be in mid-November, but we're still hashing out the details even as we speak.
So at this point, you guys have got to set up a hotel. Have you got some of the speakers lined up?
We do, and one of the nice things is we've got, you know, you mentioned finding faculty and finding speakers. We've got, we could almost present a full conference itinerary just with the writers who have approached us so far, saying they would like to teach at the fall conference.
Sure.
It's one of the advantages of having a long history like ours.
I bet a panel with somebody from Blair, somebody from Algonquin, and maybe another smaller press, that'd probably draw some folks, I would imagine.
We usually do something like that. We usually try to have a publishers or editors panel and bring people in there, and it's always a lot of fun. You get some interesting questions.
Now, how many days is the conference?
3 days. It begins on Friday evening and runs through Sunday about lunchtime.
Are there awards or any kinds of contests that authors can enter at the contest?
Not at the conference. We do sponsor competitions throughout the year. We have the Thomas Wolfe Fiction Award, the Doris Betts Fiction Prize, the Randall Jarrell Poetry Prize, the Post Creative Nonfiction Prize. And those are very popular. In fact, we've just finished a cycle, our last cycle of competitions, and have announced the winners, which are up on our website.
And that website again is?
www.ncwriters.org.
Great. Now tell us a little bit about the Thomas Wolfe Memorial Prize. What is that about?
Thomas Wolfe Fiction Award is open to short stories from anyone. You don't have to be a North Carolina resident. You don't have to be a member of the North Carolina Writers Network. We're just looking to find and promote good fiction, good short stories.
And again, these contests, if folks are watching at home and they're interested in checking them out, the website for the North Carolina Writers Network is the ncwriters.org website. Our guest here today is Ed Southern, and he's the Executive Director of the North Carolina Writers Network. We've been talking a little bit about the purpose of the Writers Network and some of these transitions that you guys have had to make recently. Was the decision to move to a virtual office, was that one that was made before you came on board, or was that a decision that you pushed for?
That was made before I started the job. The board of directors had decided that that was the way that they wanted the organization to move. You know, for the reasons that I mentioned. I mean, it does save us a lot of money. And it also makes us more responsive and more flexible, and you know, in a strange sort of way, even though we don't have an office where people can go, it makes us more open to our members in a lot of ways.
Well, I think, like you say, with the website and having the blogs, it really does give folks a voice that they wouldn't have had previously.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the wonderful things that technology allows nowadays, is all new forms of communication, and you know, who better to be taking advantage of that than a Writers Network?
Now, you said that you've got a couple of other conferences. Tell us a little bit about those, and which one is the big conference, if you will.
Well, the fall conference is our signature event.
And again, the date for that
we don't have the date yet for the fall conference.
is tentatively
mid-November.
Mid-November.
And it will be somewhere in the Triangle. ncwriters.org is where you can find out about it. The Elizabeth Daniel Squire Summer Residency is a intensive workshop every summer. This year it's going to be July 25th through 27th at Queen's University of Charlotte. Writers can sign up to follow one of 3 tracks: poetry, fiction, or creative nonfiction, and receive very intensive instruction in that. They stay with the same instructor throughout the 3 days, and so that rather than just being a workshop, it's really more of a course that you're taking. And then the spring conference we just finished this past Saturday. That was at UNC Greensboro, and is similar to the fall conference. You know, we had a number of terrific workshops and sessions. We had a publishers panel that was a great deal of fun, and as well as some great readings by some of our faculty members and things like that, and that was very well attended and very well received.
Awesome. Well, it's a lot of things to maintain in the year, and I'm sure you're going to do an outstanding job as the new executive director. Ed Southern. For all of us here at RTN 10, and specifically for the Artist Craft, I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in. Stay tuned for our next episode. Next week is going to be with Garth Nix, who is the author of The Art of Racing in the Rain. Thank you very much for joining us in studio today, Ed Southern.
Thank you.
If you want to find out a little bit more about the North Carolina Writers Network, as we've mentioned a couple of times, the website is ncwriters.org. Thanks so much for tuning in.